All right, so again, you're going to open your picture in Lightroom. I'm going to select this image right here. I'm going to go to my transforming tools here. I'm going to go to cropping. I'm going to crop this to 4 by 5 because that's what our assignment is here. I'm going to rotate if I want to here. I'm going to try to find my point of focus inside this image here. I'm going to play around a little bit and see what I like. Again, you can take a smaller piece of something, right? Like maybe I took this whole picture in here, but this is really maybe the most interesting part of my design right down here. So I'm going to cut off the rest of it. I'm just going to choose that one little piece. So here's my abstract, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm going to adjust the exposure here a little bit. I'm going to do some healing if I want to. I'm going to make my brush smaller using the brackets here. Let's paint this out here. There we go. So I got rid of that. I'm going to get rid of this little scrape down here. There we go. And again, I'm not going to make the whole thing perfectly clean, but I'm just sort of just messing around a little bit, just like that. All right, so everything is all set to go. So now I'm going to go here to File. I'm going to say Edit in Photoshop, and I'm going to send it over to Photoshop, so once it's the right size. Now in Photoshop, remember, these are my tools down the left-hand side over here. This is my preferences at the top up here, so when I click on Tools along the side, my preferences are changing along the top. The tool that I'm going to focus on today is this one, which is the paintbrush right here. And again, if you just leave your mouse long enough, it'll give you a little thing. The preferences for our brush are up here. This is the size of the brush. This is the hardness. 0 hardness means a very soft, fuzzy edge. Hardness at 100% means you're going to get a very crisp, pixelated edge on the edge. Then opacity over here is 100%. That just means when you paint, it's going to cover 100%. And flow just means it's going to be a very smooth stroke. If you turn that flow down, it's going to be more like a dotted line or a polka dot. So we're going to leave everything up there at 100%. We're all good to go. Down here in the bottom, I have this. These are my colors down here. This is the flip-flop arrow here. I can flip-flop my colors. This is, I can just click on this to choose a color over here, like so. But if I don't want this color here anymore, I can just click on this black and white mini-me over here, and that just defaults it back here, and I can flip-flop between black and white. Because when you're painting with your layer mask, you want it to be true black or true white to start with, or else it's going to be somewhat invisible. All right, so over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to look for my layers. I don't see any layers right now, so I go to my Windows menu, and I bring up my layers here. Actually, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of properties, just like that. Then I go to Window, and I say Layers, and there's my Layers menu. So if you don't see that Layers menu over here, you just go to Window, seek it out here, and then click on it. It'll put a check by it. Everything else does not have a check. It disappears. So here's my layers. We remember, this is like a piece of paper here, and every layer that we put on top of this is going to be stacked on top of my background. I'm going to focus on the black and white cookie down here at the bottom. When I click on that cookie, I can see all sorts of choices here. I'm going to focus most of my attention on these, like vibrance, hue and saturation, color balance, black and white, levels, curves. Those are just exposure controls. So what I'm going to do here, or invert, we'll just invert the colors that you have in here. What's that?
If you have like, just like a black space, can you like color that to make it look cool?
Absolutely, and I'll show you.
Just do whatever your vision says.
Yeah, I'll show you a couple tricks here.
Cool.
That's a great question, Tyler.
Very good idea.
Good. I'll tell you when we get to the end. It should go back to Lightroom if you just hit save. All right, so I'm going to start with hue and saturation on this one. Oops. And again, up here at the top, you can see it made a layer on top of hue and saturation, or made hue and saturation on top of the background here. This is my controls. This is my layer mask. So you can see how the properties window over here changes. Oops. Did I just throw my layers away? Hold on. There we go. I accidentally closed my layers. So when I click on this here, I can see the properties for my layer mask. When I click on this, I can see my hue and saturation. So I'm going to change the hue to this. Maybe sort of a yellowish color here. Or, yeah, that gold, this orangish gold is sort of a weird color. You know, lightness will give you a little bit more contrast here. So this is my change that I've made here using my layer mask. Right, so now I can isolate some things here. So I could go back and add another mask on top of this, another hue and saturation mask, and I can change the color here to green. right? So this sort of answers Tyler's question a little bit about, I'm just making colors here that don't even exist. But then what I'm going to do here is maybe I don't want the whole thing to be green. So if I click this eyeball here, right, I can see the underneath, and I can see the underneath here. And then what I'm going to do with this white window over here is I'm going to poke a hole in it using a black paintbrush, right? So if I use my paintbrush, I select black as my color. I make sure I'm on the layer mask over here, which is this white border. And if I start to paint black on here, I'm punching a hole in that layer. Just like that. All right,
How
so
do you invert it then?
what do you mean invert it?
Like invert the selection. Can you do that?
You mean make all this orange and this green?
Yeah.
Well, I would do the opposite. That's a good question. I would just make this white. I would paint this back. And then I would flip-flop to black again, and I would just paint all this out here.
Okay.
Remember, I'm using the bracket keys on here, and so I can get rid of this a lot faster.
And how do
Here.
you get the color back? Sorry, lost.
That's right. Hold on a second. So this is my basic color here. And then for this one, if I want that gray to be in here and I just want the top to be orange, I'm going to go to this layer mask, and I'm going to paint out all of this underneath like this. So this is one way to start to create that point of focus, is to find just some different layers here, like so. All right, and again, these are super messy because my brush is pretty soft at the edges here. But now I'm going to show you a kind of a bonus trick that is sort of helpful to sort of line things up here. So like for this particular layer, oops, I guess it's only affected because of that layer that's above it here. So let's just work on the orange for now. This tool up here is this Polygon Lasso tool or magnetic lasso tool. What you can do is actually make a selection first. So if I click here, 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 and here, I've made a selection around this orange spot right here. So now when I paint, I can paint using just sort of like a free hand, and I don't have to worry about painting over the lines because I can only paint inside that selection like that, right? So it sort of locks it out. And then I can say select the inverse, and then I can go to white. Oops. Then I can do the opposite out here to really clean up that line and paint this line a lot sharper out here too. So see the way it won't let me paint inside or outside of that selection.
Yeah.
So then for up here, I can do the same thing with green. Let's paint this white again. Make sure I'm on the right layer. All right, I'm going to paint this back like so. I understand why that's so light. Oh, maybe because I don't have the orange underneath it anymore. That's why, because this color is being affected by the orange that's underneath. So again, you can just select multiple areas. Then I'm just going to say select, deselect, and that's going to allow me to sort of freely move about the cabin here. So again, you can experiment with some of these different layer here. Invert again is going to invert your whole project here. Right, so then I could, again, use my selection tool here, and I could just select a certain area. Command D or select, deselect is what I click there. Let's take out this part here. So again, I'm going to outline just what I want to keep. Just like so. You can go outside the drawing, just like that. And then I'm going to paint black. And I'm clearing that invert part just in this area right here. So it takes, you got to mess around a little bit. So then select, deselect. All right, I'm starting to create something. So this is my before, right? And I'm starting to create a little bit more point of focus by adjusting colors and doing some different things out there. So that is sort of it. So then when you're done, this was the question we had here. If I go to File and I say Save, and I look back to Lightroom, and I look at all my pictures here, you can see this little blue circle here. That means that it's syncing. So it takes a minute or two to sync that up. So just give that a few minutes there. And I can see over here too, syncing photos it says. So it's just going to take a minute to sync. And it depends on how much you did. But then I'll see here, I'll see this preview will become colored like it was in Photoshop. And then some of these are goofy. You can see here, I just used the layer mask to make polka dots and some other shapes and stuff on there. See if that's done syncing here. All right, now it's not going to show me. So watch what happens when I close Photoshop. Quit Photoshop. There you go. So see this one, it just synced it up right next door. So now I can come back to Lightroom, and if I want to make some more adjustments, I can, just like so. But if I make adjustments in Lightroom and I send it back to Photoshop, my layers will no longer be there. It'll just be a flat image. Then also in Photoshop, you can save as, hang on a second, edit in Photoshop. Let's bust that open again. See, I didn't make any changes to it, so I still have my layers here. I can say save as, and it's going to ask you to save it in the cloud or on your computer. You want to save it into the cloud, and then you can, what do you call it? You can work on it on your iPad. Just like so. Say OK, push through all that. So that is in there. All right, another shortcut, if you are looking for files, in your home screen, you can also click on Lightroom Photos here. So this is just your home. But if you go to Lightroom Photos, you can also look at your Lightroom library from the Photoshop menu, which is kind of cool. All right, so there you have it.